Okay, I have this 2013 Nissan Murano here. We're going to be replacing the CVT transmission in this. Now this has the V6. Basically, once this gets warmed up, just for a few minutes, it's just slipping and not going anywhere, and it was barely moving even when you first crank it up, making a lot of noise. So it's gone bad. These transmissions are kind of pricey. I was able to get one just shy of $1,200 for this one, and I got this through eBay. We'll take a look at it here. Okay, so here's the transmission. The only downside to this one is I don't know, what the miles on this transmission are, but this was one of the cheaper ones. They had really good feedback, so I decided to go with this. Now this one, and the one in the vehicle, does still have the dipstick, so we should be able to get a pretty accurate reading. Now, I got CVT fluid already. I wound up getting about 12 quarts. This thing holds, I think, around 10, just slightly over 10, so I don't know how much exactly it's going to take. Don't know how much was drained, so I just got 12 quarts. I'm going to have extra because I got a good deal ordering it through Amazon. So anyways, we're going to go ahead. We've got the transmission. We're just going to go ahead and get started and get the vehicle lifted and start removing some things here. Okay, we've got the rear wheels chalked on both sides. We're going to take a 21 and start going through breaking these lugs loose before we go to lifting it. We'll do this on both sides, and then we're going to get it lifted and supported on both sides. Okay, I just wanted to show you where I've got some blocks here now on both sides, and I was lifting it right up here under where the control arm is. And right now I'm just lifting it enough to get the wheel off here, and we don't want it up too high until we get a lot of stuff disconnected from up top. So we're going to just get the wheels off for starters and go from there. Right. Okay, we're going to start on removing this cotter pin. This thing is really stubborn. Alright, so I'm going to start with this. Be very careful with your threads. But these are really heavy duty cotter pins. So we'll keep up with that. Right, now we're going to go ahead and get on this. Now, if you don't have a impact to break it loose, you'll want to put your wheel back on with that center nub out and use a big breaker bar. Okay, and this is a 32 millimeter. Okay, I had to keep at it with my big impact here, but it did relent. But they are pretty tight, and this is a pretty heavy duty one. It's a 3/4, but I have it adapted down, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as I'm doing over here. Okay, the next obstacle is getting this loose here. Now if you're lucky, this will not be seized up, but it more than likely is going to be seized up. Okay, so you want to spray a little bit of spray lubricant up in there on them splines. That's where you're going to start out. Okay, so and this is just where we start. Now I'm going to put this back on here, give it a few hits. Alright, so that one actually came loose really easy. Can't always guarantee that, but if it will do that, you're home free. Alright. Okay, we're over on the driver's side. Now this one here, as you can see, is not budging. So you run into one like this, it may get a little more extensive. I have had to take the whole entire knuckle out, just popping it out of the transmission and bringing the whole knuckle out, and I've got some other videos I can probably share with you a link on that, but I'll start out with a spray lubricant, just let it soak and just keep working at it, and I'll get a bigger mallet if need be and just keep hitting it here. Hopefully it'll come loose. Okay, so just to show you what I'm doing here, this is basically the next step. I've got a heavy 10-pound sledge and we've managed to get it loose. Now if this had not worked, we would have had to remove the whole knuckle and get it upright. Basically fill this up with a spray lubricant, because that's ultimately what's going to break it loose, not really the force if it's that seized up. But we got it. It was still pretty stubborn, but we've got it broke loose. Far enough that we can get it out of here now. Okay, the next thing we're going to get on is this brake caliper here. We're going to wire it up here on the spring. Okay, so we got a 22 millimeter right up here on the top. We're going to need to get it loose. I'm going to break this loose and we'll get on the lower one there. Alright, we'll get on that lower. Okay, here's our lower. Before we take that top one completely out, there's one more thing that we've got to do before we can wire this up here out of the way. We're going to go ahead and remove this lower one all the way. Okay, that's a pretty long bolt. Okay, so there's that lower one there. Okay, this is the lower brake hose clip. We're going to attempt to push this off here. These are usually pretty tight. So there's that. Now this should push out and that'll free up some slack. Okay, with that top bolt out, we should be able to wiggle this up and off of here. And we'll just set it up here a moment till we get some wire. Okay, so we got that way up out of the way with a bit of wire. You see we had enough slack taking that loose. Okay, now we'll go ahead and get this rotor out of the way. Okay, we come over here, we've got an ABS wire we need to get loose, so we're not putting it in a bind. Sometimes these are difficult to wiggle up out of here, and sometimes they're not so bad. That one's real easy. We'll just go ahead and put that back. So we'll just tuck this up somewhere safely out of the way so we're not damaging it. Okay, we're going to get on these 21 millimeters here on the knuckle. Always remove the nut side. Now if they're splined, we won't have to hold it. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Okay, they're not. Okay, it's starting to spin, so I'm going to have to hold that other side. I was able to break it loose though. Okay, so we're going to get another 21 over on this other side and hold it. Alright, so I got the other side over here where I can hold it. So sometimes they use spline bolts, sometimes they don't. The spline ones are a little bit more difficult to remove. However, you have to kind of knock them out, or these will usually just pull right out. Looks like there was some really good high strength Loctite somebody had on there. Alright, so we're just going to remove this lower one. Now we're going to be careful once we get this completely loose. Oftentimes the whole, or once we take the bolt out, the whole knuckle will just fall and it could damage our CV axle. We do not want that. So once we get this nut off of here, we're going to get a hand on the knuckle before we remove this bolt entirely. See the okay, so okay, and I'm going to kind of make sure to push this back so this doesn't get in the bind too. Okay, so the bolt is out. We should be able to pull. I'm going to kind of push this back. And there we have it. And I like to put the nut back on here so these threads aren't getting damaged, and just put that cotter pin on there as well. Just kind of jam it. Okay, the knuckle removal and everything's pretty much the same, but the CV axles themselves are a little bit different from one side to the other. However, the next thing we need to do is get a pan out here. We're going to drain this fluid down for the CVT. We're going to drain that fluid before we remove the CV axle, so we don't have fluid just going everywhere. Okay, we got our pan here. We come underneath and we find the plug under here, and you can see that right there. You're going to need an Allen to get that. Now I've got a 3/8 that will work, so that's what I'm using. And so it's probably a metric size, but this will get it done. And so this is going to be pretty snug, it looks like. Let me get my bigger one, because I really don't want to break this, because that is really tight. Okay, so I had to get my extended ratchet to get it loose, and I mean it popped when it came loose, so it was pretty snug. But it's real easy once you get it from there. Now this stuff is going to pour out, I'm sure. We're going to back up a little bit. But once we get this drained, we won't have any worries with it coming out when we're moving it around and taking the CVs out. Alright, so there it goes. And that stuff's just as black as it can be, but boy, it comes out quick. So a lot of problems come from just not changing fluid in the first place, and you know, if you wait too long, then the damage has been done. So you just have to have to deal with it from there. Okay, so I've got my 36-inch crowbar, 3 foot, and we're fixing to be going up in here and getting a hold of this and popping this out. We've got it still dripping a little bit, but the majority of it's all out. Kind of curious how much is there. It looks like a gallon or more, but we're getting ready to get in here and pop this out. Okay, so you can see how I kind of got my crowbar positioned here, and we're just basically going to rock it back and forth until we pop it loose. Like I said, to date I have not found a CV axle yet that I couldn't get loose with this 36-inch crowbar. Some of them are stubborn, but they do come loose. Alright, we may have to get a different position here. It's not wanting to. You gotta be careful though, don't, you know, hit anything you're not supposed to hit with your crowbar. Alright, we're gonna get reoriented here. I'm gonna come on the other side of that stabilizer, because it's kind of getting in my way. Here we go. I think this will work. Okay, right there did it. See, the stabilizer was just a little bit in my way, so you want to make sure you get it pulled enough to where you can reach in there and get it with your hand. This thing loves to get in the way. Alright, so carefully grab that and pull that out of there. Alright, so now we're going to have to get on the other side, and it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, on this side I could pop it loose from this, but that's not going to get it completely out of here. I'm still going to have to remove that stub over there that's going underneath. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this whole entire unit, the bracket. So we're going to remove the stub shaft and the CV out here, and we've got some bolts up in here, and some that's probably difficult for you to see back there, but that's what we're going to do. Is we're going to figure out how to get to these. I believe that there's 2, but there could be more in there, but I'm fixing to find out. Okay, I'm working on that first one up in there, and I've got just a long 1/2-inch extension, and this is a 16 millimeter bolt up in here, and we'll just got the first one loose from that bracket. I'll have to get a hand on it in a second. Alright, so there is the first one. Now I'm going to try to get up there and get to that other one that's hard to see. Okay, I was going to try to zoom in to this one, but it's really difficult to see from this angle here. Okay, I stand corrected. I was about to do this wrong. You see this piece going around here that has push pins and stuff, and it also attaches over here. This piece right here, we're going to disconnect it here, and up here, and remove this panel here. Okay, so we dropped that panel down. Only one of those push pins didn't break, by the way. And then we're going to get in there on that other 16 you see right there. We're just going to get our extensions and go in there and get that one out, and that should allow us to pull this whole entire thing out of here. Alright, so we're going to get on this with our 16. So I'm using a 1/2-inch, my extended ratchet, to break it loose. It's a little difficult at first. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and finish getting that out of there. All right, so we've got the fluid drain, so we should be able to go ahead and pull this out of here. Okay, so here we go. Let's see if we've got it here. Okay, still not moving. So we've got something still attached. Okay, so where we're at, I took those two bolts out on either side. Now this is not coming out of here this way. There's probably a tool to remove the CV easily, but I don't have it, and you can see that it's very hard to get a hold of. So basically, we've got it strapped up here for now, and we're gonna have to get this subframe down anyway. So we got this supported. We're just gonna hold up on this and go ahead and just kind of switch gears. We will have to remove some things to get the subframe down. You know, we've got some various lines, and there's going to be a few things and brackets, I'm sure, and it's quite possible we may have to remove some stuff on the front here. But we're going to switch over and come up top. We're going to start removing some stuff up here while I've got the vehicle down low enough, because to get to the subframe I want to lift it up to get under there and work. So I'm going to go ahead and work from up here. We're going to start removing some of this, and we'll get our air intake and get enough from up here to where we can work, and probably go ahead and just get the battery out and get everything disconnected that we need to from up here. Okay, the very first piece, we've got a couple of tins holding this down. You just kind of pull up and work that out of there. It's got a rubber grommet there, and we'll go ahead and just set that aside. Okay, we're going to go up in here with a 8mm and get a hold of this band that's on the air intake. We're just going to loosen it right here. I'll slip this whole thing off. Okay, and we've just removed this clamp and backed this off right here. Okay, right here we've got a connector. We'll go ahead and squeeze that down. And it may have a zip tie right here on the box. You'll need to get that loose. Okay, back down in here we got a tin on the back side of this box. Just going to try to use this extension. I'll get it the rest of the way by hand here. There's that. Okay, we should be able to remove this entire box without too much difficulty here now if we can squeeze it out. So this band over here is still stuck. Okay, we're going to try to rotate it around here. It's a pretty tight squeeze. I may need to remove some more stuff. Okay, so I had to slip that piece completely off to be able to fit this out. It's just simply too snug of a fit. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start getting this battery. We've got to get these on both sides. And we also got a bracket right here. And it's a good idea to, at this point, start labeling stuff and remembering where every little piece goes so we can get it back where it was. Okay, so we're just gonna finish removing these here. Those will just come unhooked. Or should. May have another snap on this other side that I can't see. Looks like there's a snap going into a bracket down there. So I'm just going to remove this one. Okay. Almost got it. All right. So there's that. We'll just put that back. It's a really tight bolt. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this battery. So we should be able to just got this plastic tray down here, and then we can go ahead and start getting on these bolts down here, and then we'll remove these three here, 13s. Okay, as you can see, everything's bolted to everything. We got a pretty good assortment of bolts. And then we also got one back over here hiding on that bracket. So we've got, got one more right up here that I didn't get. So we got one more. Okay, there's that one out of that corner. And they used quite a few bolts to hold this down, so it definitely was in no danger of going anywhere. Okay, I've got a wire connector here. I'm gonna have to get that tab pulled up. It's stuck on that. You'll find that you use a pick tool a lot, moving a lot of various connectors and stuff. And I'm still not doing this exactly right, or it would be coming out of here a lot easier. We've about got it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove these little locking clips for this wire. They're going to run it all around, and some of them are going to break just because they're so brittle. And so that's going to clear that up. And now we've got a tin right here that I'm going to have to get to, if you can see that down in there. Okay, so I'm going down in here after this tin, I think that will free up this little bracket. It's looks like I've got another clip right here. I'm gonna have to pop that up. It looks like, to get this off of here. Okay, on this one right here, you push in on that tab. You come through that and you push in that tab and pull it up. So I think we've got all this kind of separated from the brackets for the most part here. Okay, if I don't have to, I'm not going to disconnect these from the computer, but we do have a couple of tins. You can see there and there. We're just going to loosen those to where we can basically slide this off. Maybe take the top one completely out and slip the bottom one off. But anyways, we're going to do that to get this bracket loose and try to leave this connected. Okay, remove those tins completely. Now we've got this actually loose. And I will say, this is one of the more overly complicated little battery setups and bracket setups that I've seen. But I think we're going to be able to get this out of here now. Okay, this one I'm going to remove because I'd have to unbolt it here. But you push down on this little locking tab right here, and that releases that. And then you can push that forward, and you should be able to get this to release. We're going to label this and tape it up. But anyways, we got that loose there. We can pull that out now. Okay, so we finally got that piece out of there. So it's a really complicated bracket that kind of loops and ties into everything, making it hard to take these things out. You want to make sure and label, so when you're going back in, it's not going to be that difficult. Now we've got a couple bolts holding this bracket down here. This one, if you can see the bolt right down here, some 13s. We've got one on each side. We're going to go ahead and remove that and see if there's anything else attached to it. But we're going to get this piece out next, and what looks like we're getting there. I think I'll be able to leave this. I'm not sure. I can remove it if need be, but if I don't have to, I'll just kind of work around it. But we're almost to the starter here. Once we're getting some layers out of the way. Okay, I did go ahead and remove that, label those. Felt like that was going to get in the way, so I went ahead, we got that removed, and so this is freed up. Said pay particular attention as to where things route, what they route under. Okay, there's that clip I was telling you about that goes into. So pay attention to where things route so you can get them back where they go when you put it back together. So we're going to separate this probably to get it out of the way. There should be a, yeah. So we are going to take that 13 loose, so just so we can separate this wire. So we'll label that and pull that back over there, and then once I do that, I'm going to get on these bolts that are going right down here that I was showing you on this bracket right here. Okay, so we're getting down here on this bracket. I've got I 13 millimeter here, breaking this loose. We've still got one more on the other side there. Not real easy to get back behind here. With this out of the way, it's really going to clear up some room where I can see something, and we'll probably get to the starter next. We're definitely going to have to get that before we can get our flex plate loose from the torque converter. Okay, so there's that one. Now we got one more over here on this other side. Gonna pan over here. We're gonna have to go right down here and get to this one. Okay, so now I've got to get this bolt right here, and it's even more difficult to get the one on this side. But you can get to it. Okay, so we're going to remove this shifter cable here. Okay, so right here we just have a 13. And then I've got a pair of spreader pliers. I'm going to come back over here to this clip and just push up on this. Okay, and we'll lift up here and just give that a push back. Just push it back. Okay, right here we've got a ground that we took loose right here with this 13. And we'll just mark and label that as to where it goes. Okay, usually you can push those clips and it'll pop the connectors up, but it didn't seem to be wanting to work, so I pushed it off. Instead of pushing it in, I basically just pushed it off of there. So we got the clip out. Just took a flat screwdriver, went down there and pushed it off. It's still connected. I don't really know what exactly is going on, but it's still not coming loose here, so I'm going to have to work with it here. I may have to twist it or something to get it to unlock. Okay, that clip I took off of that wire connector is not what's holding it on. It's got a twist lock, but I'm going to wait till I get some more things out of the way, and maybe even the subframe, because I'm going to have to get some pliers on it. There's simply no way of getting to it really as it is without having some type of fancy tool. There's just too much in the way. But I've got my 12 on the starter. I'm going to go ahead and take this starter wire. We done got the one out. I'm going to finish removing that nut right there. We're going to get on those bolts. Actually, we'll probably go ahead and get the dipstick, the 10 millimeters on the dipstick there next. Okay, so we should be able to wiggle this up and out of here. I just put a cap in there. It doesn't really matter much. This one's not any good, but keep the debris and stuff out in case someone needs this for a rebuildable. Okay, these are super tight. I've got my extended ratchet. The one on the bottom, you just have to kind of feel for it. You can't really see it from up here. It's kind of hidden down under there. We're fixing to get these two 14 millimeters out. Right, we should be able to get this out of here now. Okay, we're going to switch over to removing the subframe here. I'm going to lift the vehicle up a little bit so we can get underneath to the exhaust first. Okay, so we're going to work on the exhaust. We're just up here at the very front piece. I've got a 16. Now, I've also sprayed these down, all these bolts with spray lubricant. So we'll need some various extensions to get to these right here. Okay, so there's the front three. All right, so we got 3 here. Okay, I had to break out the big gun here. These are really being stubborn. Look forward to a lot of fun with these rusty exhaust bolts. We got one more here. Okay, we're on this final section back here in the back. Now this is not going to fall because it's got some hangers there up in the front. Probably going to have to use a swivel on this right side. Okay, so I have to use the swivel on this side here. You got to be careful, those things will sling off there and get you. Okay, we're at the rear section. We're going to have to start by trying to push this back. Separate these. Alright. Okay, this rubber hanger, we want to get this sprayed down, either some lithium or spray lubricant. Because we're going to have to slide it off while pulling on that back there. Lithium actually works a little better. Okay, so I got some lithium on there. So what I'll have to do is actually get it drop down a little bit at the back. And I should be able to push it back there, no problem. Okay, I'm actually going about this the hard way. There's a couple of these 13s that we're going to remove to drop this down instead of sliding it back. So if we try to slide it back, we got to get it off of these here first, which means we got to pull it forward, so it's going to be easier just to take those bolts out. Okay, you can see with that, we're just going to drop on out of there. We're going to drag this out from under here. This actually clears up quite a bit of room as far as getting to this transmission, which we got to get in here to get to our flex plate. Looks like that CV axle was leaking real good. Could have been part of the problem, losing fluid. Now, I probably should put a new seal in the one I got over there, but I don't know that I will. May just wait and see what it's going to do. I can always come back and get a hold of it, but we'll see. But anyways, you're starting to see that it's a lot easier to see what's going on in here. Those two, I just put those back. That was holding that mount for that exhaust. You can see we cleared up all that space. So we're going to go ahead at this point, and I'm going to use my jacks and lower this subframe is going to be lowered down onto my dolly. Now I am going to have to support this engine and the transmission. I'm going to get a jack stand and everything under here. We're going to get it supported, and we'll make sure we got that secured, because we have our mounts on the middle mount is attached to the subframe. You can see right there. You got one up here as well, and then you got the one over there that's on that transmission. So 3 of our mounts are on this subframe. So we got one up on the top up there that could secure that. But we definitely want to make sure that we've got at least a couple of supports under here to make sure that this is not going to be moving around on us. So we'll probably go ahead and do that next. Okay, so actually getting way ahead of myself. I've got a 10mm. We're going to go ahead and remove this panel and get to work on removing these nuts from the torque converter flex plate. Another thing, before I go to supporting anything and get a bunch of stuff in my way, I'm probably going to go ahead and remove these bottommost bolts that we have here. So we'll also do that. Still hadn't got to that CV axle over there. I'm waiting to get hopefully the subframe down, and then maybe I can get to that bracket that we were messing with earlier. So I'm going to get out here on this crank and turn this and start taking these locking nuts loose here. Okay, so we got a 19mm out here with a extended handle ratchet set up on the crank so we can turn it. Okay, and you may have to hold it out there on the crank, keep this from turning on you as well. You know how tight it is. It's pretty tight. Okay, I'm gonna have to get a bigger ratchet here. Okay, I've got my extended handle ratchet here, and we'll see if we can have any luck with this. Oh, and knocked the camera over. Okay, so these are extremely tight to break loose. Now once it's loose, comes off here no problem, but that took a lot of force, a lot more than I thought it would. Alright, so we're going to rotate it on around here. And we'll try it again. We'll see if we can, how hard this one's going to be. Wow. I gotta say that, I don't know, I've gotten hold of some tight ones before, but these are some of the tightest that I've had to remove. Alright, so I think we got 2 more. We're just gonna keep on going here. They were no danger of coming loose. Alright, so one more. They said you have to hold this crank while you're doing that, or it'll turn on you. Alright, so that's all those. We'll get these put up. Alright, so these lower are going to be 16s. There's no problem removing these. It's got a lot of other bolts holding it. We just don't want to, I'm going to be like
getting some supports and lowering things and getting other things in the way. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these lower ones. Now you want to be mindful of where these bolts came from and go ahead and label them. I like to tape them and number them and all that good stuff, because there's sometimes at different lengths and you don't want to be trying to figure it out when you're putting it back together and wasting a lot of time. These bottom two are actually the same length, but I'm doubting that many of the rest of them will be. Different size, different lengths. Okay, so this one up over here, I'm gonna have to get a ratchet wrench or something. I can't get my ratchet in there, but I'm gonna get this one here, and then I'm gonna call it good for the bolts. And surprisingly, all these down here on the bottom are the same length so far. Usually never happens. Alright, so I'm going to get that one out, and that's going to be good for this right now. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is removing all these little push pins that are holding this flap under here. It's a good idea to get yourself a kit that has these. It's very likely you're going to break most of these removing them. They just get brittle, but you just pry this little part down and pop each one of these out. So we're going to get this piece out of the way so we can see what exactly is all connected to this subframe up here in the front. Okay, so there we have that panel down. I think I broke all but maybe two of them out of all those. So here's what we got. And we'll have to figure out if there's anything else connected to this and get it out of the way, because we got to drop this whole subframe here. So it doesn't look like it's too bad. It's got the mount. We're going to come from the top up there. Looks like this piece, well, that's attached to it. But anyway, it looks like something that could get damaged easily, so I'm probably going to remove that. Looks like it's got some nuts there and there, some 13s. I'll probably just get that off there. Anything that can get broken will. Okay, I got me a 18 millimeter with a long extension. We're going to go right down in here for starters. You can see that there. You can get to that one on that mount real easy from up here. Right, so we're just loosening this one off. These are pretty tight, by the way. And there are, I believe, 6 mounts. One on each end of engine transmission, 2 in the center, front and back, and then there's a couple of torsion mounts. Okay, I'm just going down here with a magnet. Okay, so there's that one. Okay, we got an 18 here for this stabilizer link. Right, I'm going to have to put a little pressure on this to zip that the rest of the way off. I'm going to use my little pry bar here. And there we go. Okay, we have a lower torsion mount that's bolted down to this subframe. We're going to take it loose right here. That 18, you see how it mounts that. So we're going to have to take it loose before we can drop this down. Now we also, you can see right there, there's a heat shield, and we've got a 10 millimeter right there that's connected to this. It's on the subframe, so we're going to take that out as well. Okay, so we're going to get on this. Okay, I had to wind up using my big impact again. This was really tight. Okay, you can see as we lower this, this is loose, so this will be fine. Okay, now we're going to get on this little 10 millimeter that's on the heat shield here, and it's on top of this mount. Again, everything is very tight. All right, so now we've got that loose. Okay, this power steering line, I'm going to disconnect it right there. You see how it runs around the frame. I'm just going to disconnect it there and let it drip. And then we're going to go underneath here. We've got some more things to get loose. Okay, so you come back here behind the subframe, and we're looking up here at this. Right there's a 12 millimeter for the steering knuckle, and we're just taking that out. 12 millimeter, and there's what that looks like. We got a connector right here that's it'll probably be okay to stay connected, but anyway, we've got also right here a 14 millimeter that we're going to have to get a hold of and get this line loose. Now also right up here is a couple of 10 millimeters. I'm going to take these out, and these are holding it to the top of this. Okay, this will unsnap from this bracket and just push this return hose up and out of there, and that'll be fine. So this bracket is loose, so when we take this line loose, this will all come up and it won't be attached. Now you want to go ahead and probably put yourself a mark on that up there so it doesn't get mixed up as to which way it goes. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and take this loose. We'll get a drip pan down here to catch all this power steering fluid. And another thing that I'm working on, I've got an 18 millimeter. Now this is the rear mount. You can probably get to it from the top with a swivel, maybe an extension, but I worked it loose down here with a wrench by simply taking my rubber mallet and hitting this a little bit, and I've got it loose. It was really tight, but it's really kind of in a hard spot, but this has to come off in order to lower. And then we've got one more mount over on the transmission itself that we're going to need to get loose before we can drop everything down. And here's that, and we'll just keep up with that. So that's loose now. We just need to get this and get a drip pan, and I think we're good under here for right now. Okay, so yeah, get this wire loose, get that out of the way, and then you're going to pop these little snaps out of this frame right here. Okay, here's a look at your power steering bolt that comes out of that rack there. You got two of these copper washers. They sandwich that line in between them. Okay, I just tapped that up and off there with a little wrench, and I put a mark on that so I get those splines lined back up as to where they were. Okay, we're going to go ahead and proceed on with this over here. I think we're just going to take these bolts out. Don't really think there'll be any need in taking the other ones here, so we're just going to take and zip these out. These 16s, those 3. Now it's sitting on enough mounts it shouldn't move any, but we may go ahead and get us a jack stand under here. Okay, I got my jack stands under here ready to support. One for the transmission, one for the engine, and I got this other return line over here dripping. You can see it right there. I took that loose from that hose. So we got this little piece that I was talking about up here. I took that out. So at this point I'm getting ready to lower the subframe. So we're going to start getting on the bolts of the subframe, and I'm going to probably utilize both of my jacks just to lower it down to the concrete here, and then we'll just adjust the frame and the transmission stuff as needed, but this should be plenty enough to hold it here for now. Now the nice thing about these stands, they also got these locking pins that you can put in here. So we don't have it lowered all the way as far as I need it, so I've kind of got a little bit of gap right there because it needs to come down a couple inches, so I may even have to go down farther, but this will work for the moment. Okay, these at the back here are 16s. Okay, the next one up is right here. We got a 21 millimeter right there. You can see going through that body. Now I've got it supported back here because this is where the most weight's going to be. We're going to go ahead and zip that one out. Okay, so there's that long bolt out, and it'll drop that whole piece down. Now we're going to go to the other side at the back, do the same thing, and then we'll get to work up here on these front ones. Okay, I was going to show you I did have these out of the transmission side here. It did drop down just a little bit, but it wasn't much. Okay, we're up here at the front. We're getting ready to get a hold of this 21 that's up in here. Got a little bit of an extension. Okay, we're going to slowly start lowering this up here. Okay, there's water coming out of there for some reason. Had me thinking it was a leak. Okay, and there is that bolt. You can see how long that thing is. Yeah, that's a really big bolt with a big washer on there. So that's a little over 7 inches. Okay, we're gonna work on this side over here. I was doing a check over. I noticed this vacuum line right here. It goes to that part right there. Now I had to basically break it to get it off, but there's enough slack that it can be pushed back on there. It'll be fun. It runs down here to this mount, but very difficult to get loose. So just doing a check over, making sure I have everything, and we're going to slowly start lowering it down and see how it goes here. Okay, Okay, so we're going to start easing the subframe. We'll see how it's going to go here. Acts like it's kind of hung up. Let me go to the other side. Okay, the only thing hanging me up was this little torsion mount here, and should have just took it completely loose. But it was hanging up, kind of in a bind there. But other than that, I don't see anything else. We're going to slowly just keep going down with it here. Just go to the other side and lower it a little bit. Okay, we're getting it on down here. I did have to place another jack up under the front there, just to kind of, it was a little bit front heavy there, coming down. Okay, so we about got it all the way down here, just a little bit farther. We've just been kind of checking everything with the flashlight to make sure everything's clear. Okay, so here's a view of this. Drop down here. Really wasn't too bad. And I've just got them setting on blocks here. And the engine is being supported here. See the supports. And I think that I may have the transmission about where I need it as well, as far as it being low enough. So we got a support for the transmission, we got a support for the engine, and it's pretty stable. So we're going to just leave the subframe here for now. Not really much we can do with it at this point, and we will figure out what our next move is going to be. But we got half the battle. We got this subframe down. We can easily get to the other things now. Okay, with this subframe out of the way, I could come back to this. Now, just to show you this little tab right here. See, it's got a little arrow. You have to like pull out on that little tab right there. So you pull out on that. That's the lock. And then with that pulled out, you can actually get this thing to rotate. So I'm gonna have to pull it back out again, it looks like. Yeah. I think that I've got it. Okay, a little more, because it should be rotating itself up as I'm turning it. Okay. Now, I've seen people turning these by hand, but there was like no way of doing that. It's like, I can tell it's moving, it's just real stubborn. I think it's all of the dirt and debris that's on it. Make sure that that little doohickey's out. Alright, so we're going to turn this a little more. Put a little lithium on there, it seemed to help. But I think I'll do that going back on as well. Just be careful, don't get it into the connector. But there's also, like I said, this little tab right here. It's like a locking tab, so if that ain't pulled out, it won't twist. And it took me a minute to figure that out. But it is really a pain. I don't know why they would make the connector like this. It would be much easier just to be a clip-in or use the metal clips. Okay, back out here today. I'm going to get this subframe out of the way. One thing I needed out of the way, and it's really dirty and needs to be cleaned up. I'm going to put it on this, but
the first thing I've done is attached my lift. So you could do this with one of those support beams as well. You could run it across, but I want to be having to use the lift to get it out of here. But all I did was attached the bolt right here, and I put a little bit longer. It was about a 1/2 inch longer than the one I took out, and I got a hold of it in about the middle, and we've got it just pulled up here, supported. And so we're going to go ahead and go under here and take these jack stands out of the way since the engine's supported, and then we're going to get the subframe down on my dolly so we can roll it out here and get it completely out of the way so we can actually do something. So that's all I'm working on at this point. So it's pretty straightforward. Just takes a little bit of time to lift it and get this subframe out of the way, because it's going to be right in the way of trying to remove this transmission. Okay, here we are sliding it out, and this mover's dolly really makes it quite easy. So once I get out here, I'm just going to drag it on across, because I've got to get this cleaned up. I will want to cap that power steering off, and I'm going to get out here and spray all this mud and stuff off here as well. But yeah, it's coming out of here real easy. Got plenty of room. Okay, we've got the engine supported here. You can see how that is kind of cradling on that oil pan there. We've got another one here for backup. And we're coming back here, we're revisiting the CV axle because it did not want to slide out of this bracket. So we're going to take and we're removing this whole entire bracket. And there's this is for the mount, the bracket. I'm getting ready to move that because you can see up here is the 16 or 5/8 that I need to get to there. And I'm going to have to get this out of the way so I can get a little box-in wrench up there and try to remove that. And these are very tight too. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just finish taking these out here. Okay, as you can see, I can get a box-in wrench on there now, and what we're going to do is come down here and get another one on here, because like I said, these are very tight, and we're going to use that to break it loose. Okay, so there we go. With that, it wasn't too difficult. So I'm probably going to get my, well, actually this one's coming out fairly easy. Okay, and we are going to have one more right here, and that is a different size, but that's for the brace that's on the exhaust. So we need to go ahead and looks like we're going to take that bolt off, and we may have to remove the stud on the other side. I'm not sure, but we're definitely going to have to find out what size that is and get that off of there first. Okay, I've got a 14 here for this one. So I worry that I'm not going to be able to slip this out of here due to the limited room, so I'm probably going to have to remove that stud on the other side, and that might be a chore. So I'm wondering, I don't really know if I can slip it out of here without doing that or not. I actually didn't even notice that this was going through this brace, or this CV brace, until now. But if I can get enough slack to slip it out, I may not have to. I don't know.
it's definitely tight. And it's all because this CV is seized up in the bracket here. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to do that, it looks like. So, I think what my option is here is actually removing this this catalyst. I think it's going to be easier than trying to take the stud out of that. So we'll see. Okay, I was wrong. It's just a 14 millimeter here that's coming through this side. It's going into that. So all I got to do is remove this 14, and I can take that brace completely off of there. So just that right there, and then that brace will fall down. Okay, there is that out of there now. Now there was a connector right here that I took loose earlier. I don't think I showed that, and it just basically has a little brace that goes on this bracket for the CV. Now you do have to take that loose. We're going to have to be cautious when pulling that out of there so we're not damaging that. Okay, I'm going to carefully start trying to maneuver this and see if I can wiggle it out of here. I've got it strapped up out here. I'm going to have to remove this and start working it around. It's still acting like it's a little bit stuck here. I'm going to have to check it out, see what's going on. Okay, I'm still unable to remove this even with as much as I've taken off here, because it's hitting right here where this tensioner is because of the way this bracket is made. So this still is not going to work. I've pulled it out a little bit, but unable to get it the rest of the way. So I'm going to have to try to separate this. It's definitely not the way to remove this, but it's really hung up. So we're going to have to try to pop, get this thing apart here, and see what we can do. I think that I might be able to push it back and drop it down. We're going to have to figure this out though, because I got to get this stub shaft out. Okay, I could see this was never going to work trying to get room to slide this bracket out with this thing. So, but actually when I was able to get it out here, I could spin this and start hitting this with a hammer a little bit, and that enabled it to free up. It was just seized on this. You can see how this is a machine to fit in there exactly, but it was seized up on there with rust and everything. It just didn't want to come loose. But now we got it. We can go ahead and pull this on out of here, and we'll just go ahead and put that bracket back and everything, because that's definitely not the way to do it unless yours is seized up. But I just didn't have any room with it in there to hit anything. So anyhow, okay, so we're finally going to start sliding this out, and so we'll have to put that bracket back. Okay, we got everything put back here. Definitely don't do this the way that I did it. Make sure you can tap this thing out here. It's going to make it much easier. Even having to buy another CV axle would have been easier than all that. But I got all those. I got the little bracket that goes to the wire. Clip the wire back in. We got the brace back on the exhaust. Back there, we put this brace back, Loctited everything, and except for whatever reason, mine was seized in there pretty good, but I should have just kept after it and got it out that way. But it was much easier with the bracket loose to be able to get it to spin. Once I got it to spin, then it actually broke loose, because this is in a way here, this oil return is in the way, and it keeps you from spinning it. But anyways, we got it back together now. We're gonna move on to removing the transmission here. Okay, I've got my 18 millimeter. We're back here behind the engine, getting this last bolt, and these are really tight 18s. I've got my extended ratchet, so this one's definitely a different link. We'll want to mark as to where it comes from. Now we've got another one up above here. It's got a bracket going to the transmission we're going to get next. And we got about 3 more up top. There's not a lot of bolts on here. We've got it supported. There's that, but we got it supported with the lift right now. Okay, now I'm about to show you this one I'm fixing to go after up here. See, it's got a bolt going through the top up there, and then there's 2 bolts, the bracket here on this. Now, I'm just going to go up top, I think, and remove that one. I think it'll be enough slack to get this out of here, no problem. So we're going to go that route, and we'll take the other bolts out up top and we'll slide this out. Okay, from up top, you know, it's hard to see, there's a lot of hoses and stuff here, but if we come right down here, you can see that bolt right in there, and that's where I'm going to get an extension. And we also got a wire connector there we need to disconnect. There's one more on the bottom there that we need to get. We'll go down underneath and get a hold of that in just a second. Okay, we've got a 16 down here on the top of this bracket here. I'm just going down through here with an extension. Okay, and there's that bolt. Okay, here where the transmission meets up with the engine, we got this sensor, we got a 10. Hopefully this will come out without too much difficulty. So there's that. We don't want to lose this piece. Okay, on top of disconnecting this, we've got the bracket right here that we need to get a hold of. And it's pretty tight here. You can see that, but I may have to go with a, okay, finally broke it loose. Just want to make sure we get every wire before we go to lowering this here. Okay, so we got that loose. We just need to separate this connector right here. Okay, with the wires off, we're going to go ahead and take out our final bolts. We've got one right there, 18 down there at the bottom where the starter. We got one at the top of the starter there. Then we've got a few up here that you can see there and there. So we got at least 2 more up here, and I think it's just these 4, and it should be loose. We're going to start with the ones right down here at the starter. Okay, so I'm going to work up here. Okay, I'm going to come through here with my extension and start working on these here. So I've got tension on the lift, so we shouldn't be any danger of moving here. So there's that one. We've got okay. Okay, so we got that one out now. So I'm going to do a once over and see if I'm missing anything else. Okay, with all of the bolts out, we're just going to start kind of wiggling this. Now, I'm going to have to be careful because all the weight's going to be wanting to tilt forward. So we're going to carefully get it back where it's clear. And then the hopes is to start lowering it, but you got to be careful. You don't want to damage the face of the engine there. So I'm going to kind of work it back slowly, and I may put a board or something up there just to keep it off of the front of that engine. But I do have it, I believe it's all loose, it looks like now. Okay, as you can see, we've got it separated. You can even come in here, you know, protect your, slowly start pushing this back. You can see it's completely loose. But the, like I said, it's going to want to go this way because of the weight, the way I'm picking it up on the back. So I got to get it clear, and then I'll deal with it. Now, when I go back in here with the other transmission, I'm going to have to rig up to it a little different, because I want it to go in nice and level, because it's going to make it very hard for me to mate it up with it like this. Okay, I got it down here. It definitely didn't come like I wanted it to. I should have been a little more level, so I would recommend getting a hold of it in at least 2 different spots with your chain when coming down with it. I'm just going to lower it on down onto the dolly here. Okay, so we got it out here. Unfortunately, we made a little bit of a mess because the torque converter fell out. But that's all right. We'll get it cleaned up, and we'll get this set off to the side, and we'll get over here and get our other transmission ready to go in here. Okay, I was just hooking up to this with my chain and testing it out to see how level it was going to be. And see, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good where I've got it here. And I just put a bolt here and here. I took a bolt out of there, put one just a little bit longer. Don't even know if that's necessary, but that's where I've got it hooked up to. You could hook up to it through a few of these attachment points up here, or come up with something else. But you see I already got the dipstick off, and we're ready to go in. I was just testing this out to see how it was going to work, and it's got this here to keep that from falling out, and I'll probably leave that on there till I actually get it in there under the car in a position. I don't want that moving on me. And I wanted to, you'll note these extra pegs here. You want to make sure that those go into the slots they're supposed to go into. If you can see here, you got some extra slots there. Those big kind of oval areas. You want to make sure that those go in there, or you won't be able to push that up. So I don't know what the purpose for those are, but anyways, that's where they have to go. And then of course these got to line up to their respective holes. So I'm just getting ready to push it under the car. We got our mess cleaned up with some floor dry, and we'll go ahead and get the lift over here and start getting it into position. We're pretty much already there. It's just kind of like a puzzle, figuring out how everything comes apart and the best way to do it. Okay, as far as getting this under here, we're just pushing it through this side on the fender well here, and I'm just kind of dodging that strut there. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of carefully work it in here. Got to miss just a few things here. And said if you take your time here, it goes in there pretty easy. Right now I'm just kind of hung up on that flap over there a little bit, but this thing's got a mind of its own. It doesn't steer real good. So there we go. So now we're clear of the fender, and we're clear of the strut. And I'm just going to kind of get it into position, and we'll get the lift on it. We're in a position for the most part. It's tilted a little bit to the back, but I'm going to get the lift on it. It's going to move anyways, but we're going to go ahead, so get hooked up to it, and we'll lift it up, and we'll see where we're at up here and adjust. You can see the alignment dowels up here. Let me show you. You got one on each side. There's the one on the left side. They're a little 3/8 or whatever, and you also got one over here on this other side over here. If I can get you to see it here, right there. So we'll want to grease those a little bit, and also that little center nub right there, we'll put a little bit of grease in that, and then we'll go ahead and start working it into place here. Okay, we got our lift latched on here, and we're going to go ahead and take that little support holding the torque converter in. Okay, I've got my torque converter oriented for the most part where I want it. I'm going to have to adjust it again to get these studs to line up, but as you can see, here's the holes. They're all straight across from each other, and then the oval is here over here. So if I get the studs, I may have to adjust them a little more, but once I have them into alignment, those other ones will go in their oval spots, no problem. Okay, we're just easing it up into place. I'm just watching, kind of got a little bit of space in between it and the engine, just kind of watching it. You see I'm just looking to where my bolts are going to be lining up in the locating dowels, and as we get close, see right here is where the locating dowel right there is going to go. So once I get close, I'm going to kind of manhandle it a little bit and work it up on there, but I'm going to have to make sure before I get it up there that my studs are going to be in alignment. I'm going to have to kind of tilt this thing back because it's really angled in that direction and the engine's angled the other way, so I'm going to have to kind of work this thing in a little bit, looks like. But so I've got to look out for the studs going into the flex plate, and also got to watch my locating dowels. But once I usually get one bolt kind of sort of started, one of these long bolts, I can kind of work it in from there and then go to the other side and get another bolt and kind of fine tune it from there. Here we are, just kind of lifting it up still. When I get close, I'll get a hold of it by hand. Now I've kind of worked out on mine how much room I needed to go up with my lift here, so everything's working out. You got to be careful. You sure don't want to get careless and get something caught on something and go to bending stuff, because it'll happen real quick and you won't even know it. So be real cautious coming up through here. A lot easier to take your time than have to go back and fix things. So I'm going to go look at my locating peg here in just a second. We're getting there, just a little bit more. Looks like we're hitting the frame over here just slightly. Okay, I'm fixing to start shifting it over here. I'm going to start one of these long bolts that come down here where the starter goes, and that's where I'm going to start at. I'm going to work it into place and get that bolt started. Okay, I wound up coming up here to the back and getting this one here started. Now, I had more trouble with this one than I usually do. I had to get a jack and lift this rear up because the weight, I was so off-centered on weight that I could not hold this and get it to line up. But I've got that one started. You can see the locating dowel above that. We'll go show you what we've done up at the front. Okay, that lower starter bolt here, we've got it started. You can see that dowel's almost about lined up there. And I'm going to show you what I'm checking as far as the torque converter. We're home free. We got these two bolts in, and that dowel's about to go in, so we're home free. The rest of them will go right in. Okay, you come down here to the bottom. You can see we got that into alignment, and we know the other ones are in the right spot. Now you reach up here where the starter is, and you can move that. You can see that I can move that. So if it's a little bit off, just bump that, reach in there through the starter, and adjust that with your hands. I'm going to go ahead and just finish getting these two here locked down. I'm putting medium Loctite. Okay, one thing I want to note is that you absolutely do not want to ever start these bolts with a ratchet until you know that you've got several good threads started by hand. You will get it cross-threaded. So never, always start them with your fingers first. You can see we're pulling that into alignment. We got the other side down. Now we're going to also check and make sure nothing's hung up or caught. Okay, so everything's clear and looks good. We're going to go ahead and just snug this side on down here. Okay, before I put any more bolts in, I want to know that my torque converter and everything's going to be fine. If there's any problems with this, I want to know it now before I get it all bolted down. So I want to make sure that I can turn this. I've got my 19mm out there on the crank, and I'm going to tighten these 14s down and just make sure that I can turn it and everything's going to be fine. And go ahead and get these locked down. Alright, so I'm just going to snug this first one completely down. Now one of the things, if your torque converter is not seated all the way, as soon as you get it up here, you'll know it. You won't be able to even move that crank. So we don't want to get everything bolted down just to find out that we got some kind of problem and we can't turn this. So we're going to snug these down one at a time, and then we're going to come back and torque them to about 35 foot-pounds. I've got, like I said, medium Loctite on there. So we'll go ahead and rotate this to the next. Not the oval. The oval is the extra stud. I don't know what that's for. But I'm going to put plenty of Loctite See a couple of dabs on each side of this. I want to make sure that these ain't coming loose. Now, I have used the high strengths before, but you know, if you have to take it back apart, you know, be warned. Okay, so you get the idea. I got 2 more there, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna torque these down about 35 foot-pounds. Okay, so I'm getting this other long one up here above the starter. We'll get them all in and we'll come back and torque these all down to about 45 foot-pounds. I'm gonna get this one, then I'm gonna switch over and get my lower one started while I'm down here. Okay, and I've got all my lower bolts here ready to go. Again, medium Loctite on everything. Now, I was unable to torque my torque converter flex plate bolts because that jack stand is in the way and I simply can't get in there to really do anything. And if it turns out that I can't fit my torque wrench in there, I'll just snug them up really good and tight. I know they're not going to move. So we'll get these. So I've got 2 more. Got one back up here where you can't see from that angle, and I got one on the other side, and that'll be the 4 down on the bottom, and then I've just got the ones up top. Got a few up there. There's not very many really, and they're pretty good sized bolts. I like the size of the bolts. I don't like to see real tiny bolts on a transmission. I like how big these are. Seems to be pretty well put together. So I'm gonna get this one on this other side of this jack stand here. Okay, I'm getting ready to go and put this bolt back in the top of that brace. That's hard to see back in there, but you can see it right there in the center of the screen. Anyways, that 14, we're gonna go ahead and put that back in there. I'm sorry, this bolt's actually a 16. Okay, I got 2 more that's going up here in the top that I got to get in. Right, we're just feeding that in with an extension. The medium Loctite. Then we got one more. It's a little bit harder to get to. It's back up here on this other side. You can see the hole right there. I'm going to get that next. Okay, with that one in back there, I'm going to go ahead and start torquing these down 45 foot-pounds, just starting at the alignment pegs and working my way around. Okay, I'm getting ready to reattach this sensor. Remember, there's this little piece, rubber piece that goes in there, and then we're gonna get our little bolt back into place. Again, a little bit of Loctite. I don't want things coming loose down the road. And then we've got the O2 sensor up on the top there after we tighten this down. Okay, we're going to connect this O2, and this thing was really stuck because of all the dirt. I didn't think I was ever going to get it apart. And it's quite possible that it's even broken, but looks like the lock. Okay, there we go. Now we got one more little brace. I'm putting some Loctite on to this little bolt that goes right here. And then that one should do it for this. We've got the transmission cooler lines over there that we can pop at least one of them on. Transmission's a little bit low for the other line, so I don't think I'm going to be able to connect it. But if we pan over here, we can see our line right there. We can at least pop that one back on and get that locked down. This one over here is just not quite in the right position to reach at the moment. Okay, that connector that goes right back there, you see that wire, just reconnected that, goes right there by that bracket that goes through the top. So I guess I'm going to need to get this chain out of here and that bolt. I didn't really plan on that being difficult, but eventually I'm going to have to. It's pretty much supported by the jack stand and stuff, but I do have to get the subframe and everything back in. I was trying to get a lot of this stuff hooked up before I went to messing with the subframe. I think we'll go ahead and put this chain's in the way, can't do that either. Okay, so this may be all we're going to do for now. I'm going to leave the dipstick out. One of the things I would like to do is get this wire connector. Oh goodness, everything's piled up here. I'd like to get this reconnected because this thing is really a pain. There's no way to get it with the subframe. You see, I greased this up a little bit, but there's a certain way that it goes. It's got like an arrow somewhere, I think, but it goes just like that. You can see that slot there, and then you just start turning this thing clockwise just like you would anything else, but it is a booger. So I'm going to probably have to get my pliers here. Okay, we got it turned down. There is an arrow like right on top. You can only see it looking from the top, but you can't turn it from up there. See, there's the arrow right there, so you got to turn it till that lines up. But this thing is just such a pain. I hate it. But we got that on there, and it's where it's supposed to be according to the arrow. So unless I have to go a whole nother turn, but I believe that is it right there, because that would cover the arrow up if it went any farther. Okay, before I slip the subframe in, I'm going to go ahead and put the CV axle in over here. It'll be a little bit easier. I did get some clean fluid on that seal right there, and I greased this really well. Hopefully it's not going to stick again. So we're getting ready to go back in here. Okay, so here we go back in. It shouldn't. Now we will have to crawl underneath and help guide it into position. We're going to get this strap back out here on it for now. And then we'll go underneath and get it fed the rest of the way. Okay, and you can see the difference here, how this is sliding in there no problem whatsoever. Okay, I did have to flip this back over. I had it going the wrong way. So I'm going to Loctite those bolts back in there now. Alright, so we got the Loctite. And get that back in there. Now we'll get this side here. We'll tighten these about 35 foot-pounds. Okay, I just put this ground wire back on here, and I'm waiting on the dipstick, it said, because I don't know if it's going to get in the way. And I think I'm going to go ahead and get the subframe back in. I was going ahead and changing the oil while it was easy to get to. And I'm going to get some clean oil in it. Okay, we got the subframe slid back under here with my little dolly. And I know that the engine's not into alignment or anything, so I'm going to have to just try to line up the engine as I'm getting this subframe up into place, which will be kind of tricky, I'm assuming. But I'm just going to get my jack over here, get one on each side, get it positioned, and just work on lifting this subframe up little by little. I don't think it's going to be too bad, but we got it cleaned up a little bit, so it's better than it was. Okay, got this lined up here. I'm actually surprised that it went as easily as it did. The main ones were the center ones that you can't hardly see from here, but that center one there was a little tricky to line up, and then the one in the back, that one right there, I had to go back there and kind of move that slightly. They're made so you can line them up, but everything else went into place pretty easy. I know those are lined up, so I'm going to work on getting the main bolts in here. I'm going to get some high strength Loctite, and I want to get these in, and then I can shift as need be, shift the engine around or whatever I need to do. I don't know, I may get these bolts started first, and the engine, the transmission here, because it might be a little bit easier to do that. But I know once I've got at least this mount, the other ones should be fairly easy to shift it if I need to. Okay, so I'm just shifting this subframe. You can see I can move this pretty easy, even though it's on my jack there. Shifting it into alignment and getting these started. Again, I'm using the medium Loctite on everything. Okay, so if you just wiggle it, gets it to line right up. So we're home free once we got this one here snugged down. The worst I will have to do is just shift the subframe slightly, in which I can do that with my jacks. That's no problem. Okay, I don't think I've got that one just right. I may have to do a little bit more shifting on that one. Okay, so I had to back those other ones off to get that one to tighten up. So if you can't get it started with your fingers, then you want to stop what you're doing. You don't want to just tighten it up with a wrench. You'll cross thread it. I'm just going to torque these about 35. Okay, on this other side here. Alright, it's got one more to torque there. I'm getting ready to put start one of these long ones in. I'm going to switch over, use a little bit of high strength Loctite on here. I don't want to have any trouble. Okay, so I worked this back one in first, and remember you got the two other bolts, but it has this conical cone that goes up into the frame there, and it made lining it up easier. So I wound up getting that started, and the front one was still a little bit off. I'm going to try it again. I might actually go over to the far corner over there and work on that one first. Okay, we went ahead and we got the body mount bolts in, so that it wasn't too bad once I had like a couple of them lined up. And so these rear ones are the one to start first because they have the conical part on the subframe that'll get it started in this part here a little bit easier. But we got everything out of the way, we got the jacks out of the way. We went ahead and torqued these down to 130 foot-pounds and got all that out of the way. Let's see, I've got these hoses. I don't know if I was showing you that earlier. I got those hooked up, and I was getting ready. I'm going to go ahead and pop this driver CV axle in. I went ahead and put some clean fluid around that seal. Okay, so here we go. All right, and I'm going to have to get my rubber mallet over here. Just going to hit this on the end. Right, so we got that seated. Okay, so we made some good progress. We'll probably get on the rest of this in the daylight. Figure out exactly where we had everything routed. Probably could go ahead and put this back now. I did get that chain out of the way. And we'll just get that 13 back on here, and we'll put our clip. We'll slide that clip right back down on that. Right, so we're going to slide that. Actually got it around backwards. Okay, so got my 13. Right. Okay, so we're back out here today. It decided it wanted to rain today, so it's kind of put a hitch in things. But I don't just, put these things back together. I go through, and when I'm taking it apart, everything is labeled and, halfway organized, at least where I can understand it. So I know that if there's any leftover pieces, then we got a problem. Everything's laid out, labeled. I think the next thing that we're going to work on, we've got these nuts that go on the center mounts there on those top studs. I'm going to Loctite those, and I think we're going to get those in next, and move on from there. I want to get those, and then we may go ahead and put the steering knuckle and stuff back together. Okay, so we got our 18 nut, some Loctite. We're going to try to go down in here. I think I'm going to have to get my magnet. You can see it right there. I think I'm going to get my magnet and get it on there, and then just go down in with my extension to get to this one, because it's kind of difficult to navigate around this stuff here. Okay, I got my long extension. Now we do have that little vacuum line that needs to go back on that place. don't remember where I had to cut it off because it was so stuck. But I'm gonna torque this down to 45 foot-pounds. Okay, another thing I just thought about before I torque this down, I'm actually going to leave that loose. Just remembered this torsion mount over here that we got to put on. It goes right there. We're going to have to get that in place before we tighten that down in case I need any slack to be able to move that at all. Okay, so we've got our lower torsion mount here. So we got our 2 bolts. We're going to get some Loctite on those. It's more of kind of a steady mist out here today than anything, just kind of annoying. But I've got stuff to do. So with every bolt, we are one step closer to getting this. I'm going to try to work. I got my Loctite on here. I'm going to try to come through here and work this back in. If I have to shift the engine, then so be it. If I have to take something loose, then I will do that. But I'm gonna have to figure out what's the easiest way. I think I'm gonna have to come from the bottom here. Okay, so all I did was feed it up from the bottom there, and that worked. And I'm just gonna, well, it was working. I'll see if I can push it back in place. But we got the long bolt first of all. Just want to get that started. We got a Loctite on here. Now this, I don't know if it's going to be in alignment just right. And it looks pretty good. Okay, something is not exactly right here. Okay, something I hadn't realized till this moment, there was a nut on the back side of that. I just found it. And this goes through there, and the nut has to tighten it from the back side. So I'm gonna have to get underneath and see if there's any room to get behind there, because that has to feed through that and go into this nut. So I'm gonna have to see if there's any way to get through there and to hold this from that back side. But it was in such a bind that I had to remove this mount because it wasn't wanting to lower the subframe the way it was. It was really getting in a bind. It was just easier to take it out, but I wish that I'd been able to leave it. All right, to show you what I had to do, you come under here and there's that heat shield that goes, it fastens to the top up here, and I had to push that back out of the way. As you can see, I can get in here now to feed this on. I'm going to hold it when I start threading it with my hand out there, and I can be able to get a wrench on it. But this heat shield, I got it shoved back there. There's just two little 10mm holding it, and it clears it completely up out of the way there. Okay, it wasn't real easy threading that bolt in there, but there is room to get it with your fingers. We got the big bolt in. I'm fixing to be torquing this to 45. Now, what I found to work here, because there's not very much clearance, I got my like 3/8 serpentine belt tool, and I slipped it on a deep socket there to hold it. So that's what I'm using to torque this. Said if this method doesn't work out, if you take this loose, you'll have to take this cat off and get it out of the way, but this here is going to work out, so I'm just getting ready to torque it. Okay, so we got those torqued to 45 foot-pounds. There's a hose I got to reconnect right here when I remove the subframe and get that clip back on there. Okay, with that torsion mount torque. I'm going to go ahead and torque this up here to 45, and then we're going to get on our rear nut back there. Okay, and before we get too far ahead, we got to put this heat shield back here. It's got two nuts that hold it. It's going to take me just a minute to get it back in position here. Okay, so that heat shield slips around behind that, and firstly it's got a nut that goes right here to the top of this torsion mount. And I got some blue Loctite. We're going to snug that one up a little bit. We'll crawl under and get the other one hooked up. Okay, so now we're snugging up the one right here that goes right where the center mount is, and you can kind of see it coming through right there. So put a little medium Loctite on here, so we'll snug these up and then we'll have that pesky heat shield back in place. Okay, so we're back here behind the subframe now. We're getting ready to get to this stud coming through on that rear mount. We got a little Loctite, and we got several things back here to reconnect as far as the power steering line, etc. We're gonna get some more power steering fluid back in it. Don't want to forget that. Alright, so I've got a 19 wrench that I'm using back here, and I'm just going to get it as tight as I can get it with this and call it good. And see, we've got the so we got the power steering line, and right now I've actually got it plugged here. I was cleaning this thing off, but we're going to get that line back in place. We got this bracket that has to go over here, and got this hose that goes, I think, under that maybe. But anyways, we're going to get it back in a position. I think I'm going to get this power steering line next, and then I'll get on the actual steering pinch connector there. We'll get that back into position. Okay, this hose should route up here to the clip on top of that bracket. Of course, I have the two screws for the bracket. I was getting ready to slip this back in over here, and there's a, hopefully it's not gonna keep dripping. And we've got our, now this has the two washers. Now one goes on each side. So we take the one off. Said it just sandwiches in between that. So then we put the other one on this side. And then we can slide it up here into place with any luck. And said just wiggle it around. I'm going to need my other hand. Wiggle it around and make sure that you get it started straight with your fingers. It's easy to cross thread stuff if you're not careful. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get it one-handed here. Okay, basically this hose wants to kind of put it in a bind, but if you got to like twist it to where it's not in a bind and get several good threads started by hand before you go to tighten it, or it's easy to get cross thread. So the only other thing we got, we'll snug that down. We got these two bolts down here next. Okay, we reconnected this rack connector here too. I just got it looped around those. It was clipped here with these horrible clips you couldn't pull out. Okay, so we're going to get these two in, and I think we're going to put a little bit of grease dab on those splines, so that'll slip on a little easier. I do have that marked, but we'll get these two in here. I think we'll be about finished up with this. Okay, so those are in, and we got this tube reclipped down on that connector. Okay, I put a light dab of grease on that just so it'd slide on easier. Now, want to make absolutely sure that we've got this lined up with our marks, or we're going to get things off center. So at this point, I'm just getting ready to slip this down, and this should wiggle its way right back down into place, and everything should line up. And screw is going to actually come through the back, but we're going to put some high strength Loctite on that. Okay, so we got our high strength Loctite. We're going to go underneath and feed that through from underneath. Now I could turn this if I want to. I just kind of want to keep everything in the same place. Okay, from underneath here, we just took extension and just got this really good and tight. And so that's all good. I think that I want to work on this exhaust next. So I think we're going to get on that. We'll get some anti-seize on all these studs and stuff, and work on hooking this exhaust up. Remember, we got the little hanger that goes right here where these are at, and we'll put those in last. But I think we're pretty well done with everything back here. And other than the exhaust, I got to get on the knuckles out there, and all this is looking good. So I think we'll just, while we're crawling around under here, we'll go ahead and get our exhaust hooked up, and then we'll hop out on our knuckles and get the rest of that put together. Okay, we took the time to get anti-seize all of our bolts and studs and the ones under the vehicle. So we're fixing to slide this back in place. Okay, basically start off by slipping this in up here first, and then holding this with my knee and pushing that back into place. You see it's holding itself. It's not even bolted at this point. So I'm going to start bolting this on up here at the front. Then we'll get these, and then we'll go to the back ones there in that order. And lastly, we'll get these right here on this hanger in place. Okay, we just went ahead and torqued the exhaust bolts and nuts down to 35 foot-pounds. I'm going to have to hold up for another day. It's the rain's getting a little bit harder, and I was hoping to get this finished up, but the rain's not going to hold up, and I don't want to be connecting stuff in the engine with this rain. Okay, so we got some grease on these splines here. Getting ready to slip this back into place. Pull this knuckle up here. We got to get it below this lip that you see right here. And just kind of manhandle it into place here. And it appears, okay, it's just a little bit. Alright, so just a second. Okay, I didn't have the CV pushed back quite far enough there when I was working that in. Now I'm going to put a little bit of medium Loctite on here. Now this lower one I'll have to and put a little bit of that.
have the wrong nut here. I think these are locking nuts anyway, but to be on the safe side, alright, so we're going to go ahead and tighten these down. Okay, I've got my 21 millimeter there. We're going to hold it on this side with our 21. We're probably going to go about 100 to 110 foot-pounds on these. Lower one. So the Loctite was probably unnecessary on these, because this is in fact a locking nut. I just get so used to putting medium Loctite on everything. So snug this down for now. I'm going to get my torque wrench over here. Finish snugging this down to about 100 foot-pounds. Alright, I actually got it set on about 110. I think this bolt can handle it. Alright, still going to have to hold this over here. We'll get this upper one here. Alright, we're getting ready to get our axle nut on here. I'm just going to run this down with the impact for now, and then we'll finish torquing it and get the vehicle, get some weight on it. But usually the impact will get it pretty tight. I think I'm just going to go with the impact and get my cotter pin back in. Alright, so here we go with this 32. Okay, and you'd be amazed how tight an impact will get something. Alright, see if we can bend this thing over. These are really heavy duty. I'm going to have to hit it with something. Not complaining, I really like to see a good heavy duty cotter pin. Okay, finally got it bent over there. Had to tap it with the little hammers. Be careful, don't hit your threads. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this little ABS connector back in here. I want to put a little bit of medium Loctite on this as well. Okay, so I'll just get my little 10 millimeter and snug that down. Or we're going to see if we can get our stabilizer link back into place. Probably going to put some Loctite on that. I don't think this one is a locking nut. Alright, so I'm going to see if I can zip that down with my impact. And it may spin on me. Okay, it actually worked out. And that's plenty tight enough. Okay, so I've got some Loctite on here. Go ahead and get this lined up. I always say this, but you know, make sure you get these started with your fingers before you go to putting a wrench on it. And sometimes, depending on how it's angled, it can be tricky to get it started at first. I still don't have it just quite right here. Okay, I think I finally got it to grab in there, maybe. So sometimes it can turn into a tricky ordeal depending on how you've got it angled just right. Sometimes they'll just go right in. We'll get on the lower one now. Let's see if we can wiggle this into place. Usually once you get the upper, the lower one will go pretty easy. Alright. Okay, so I've got my 22. We're probably going to go 130 on these, a really big bolt. Usually these require a lot of torque. But we really don't have a lot left, just other than getting the calipers and knuckles on. I got the passenger side we're going to get next, and then other than that, it's just a few things, and basically getting the battery in, and we'll be ready to hopefully try this thing out. Okay, I've got them both snugged down. I'm going to try to torque this bottom one here first, if I can get enough leverage here. Got it. Gonna go 130. Alright, so let's get on that upper. Right, so we're gonna get this upper now. Right, we got the brake line. It's got a little groove right here on the bottom. Kind of sits it into place there. Alright, that ain't going anywhere. Okay, other than our wheel, we're finished up over here, so we'll just go to the other side now. Alright, so we got this all greased up here. Right, so we're going to slip this into place. I've got a little bit of grease on the knuckle part there as well. Alright, so we're going to make sure that we got that seated. It's not. There we go. Got it all the way seated. We're going to kind of push this into alignment with the strut. Push it down a little bit. And it'll go up under these and that'll hold it. Right, so we're going to start slipping. Let's go try to go through the top first. Go down a little bit. Alright. Alright, so we're going to wiggle this one in. And these are locking nuts. So we're going to get our 21. We have to hold one side while we tighten on the other. Right, I'm just going to start with this bottom here. Right, and we're just going to go ahead and snug the top one down. Alright, I'm going to tighten these to 110. Okay, we'll get our ABS. Alright, we're going to get our stabilizer link. Got a little bit of Loctite. Got my 18 millimeter. It's plenty tight enough. Right, we'll get our 32 millimeter axle nut. I'm just going to run this down, tighten it with the impact, and get the cotter pin back in there. This is really a pain to bend. It's a heavy duty cotter pin. You have to ever so carefully bend it without hitting your threads. There we go. Okay, so we're going to get the rotor on here, and then we'll work on getting our brake caliper. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and slip this on. Alright, so we got some Loctite on our bolts. We're going to start with this top one here. And you do have to wiggle this until you get it
to line up. Don't try to start it with the wrench. All right, get the bottom one started. All right, now we're going to try to get this bottom one into alignment here. Right, so we got the top one snug down. We're going to tighten these to 130 foot-pounds. Alright, so let's get the torque wrench over here. Alright, so we're going to slip this in here. You note the little groove. Slip it from the back. Just hammer it into place. Okay, so we're all finished up here except for getting the wheel on at this point. Right, as you can see, we don't have a lot left, really. It seems like a lot, but there's really not much left. I'm going to go ahead and get the starter in next. We still got to get the dipstick. Probably put that in after this. And then we'll work on putting this puzzle together that constitutes the battery box and brackets for the computer and everything. Alright, we got the top bolt in. Now the bottom one I kind of fed through with a magnet because it's hard to see, and I looked down through this fender well right there. I've kind of fed that through with a magnet, and then I'm going to go ahead and get an extension over here and tighten those up. Go 35 on these, 35 foot-pounds. Right, so we're going to get the starter wire back on. I've got my 12 millimeter nut. So we'll just slip that right over that, and then this will just clip right back into here. Alright, so we'll just get that nut on there and we'll have the starter connected. Okay, I'm getting ready to put this dipstick in. Where I had this plug. Gonna put that down in there, and we got a bolt that goes right here as well. So we'll get that secured, and we'll get that secured down there. Okay, so now we've got the dipstick secured. You can fasten these little clips back in here if you like. Really don't think a lot of this stuff is necessary, but that's where they go, and they're very difficult to take out. So we're going to, the biggest thing is getting the rest of this together and making sure everything's in the right order. Otherwise you're having to put something in, take it back out, and getting mixed up on stuff. So we're going to go ahead, I think, and work on this piece that goes here, this bracket for all of our, and this thing's a real pain to get to this bolt over here, but I think that's the next thing we're going to get on here. We'll get this, start working on getting all this bracket and stuff for the battery back in. Okay, the first piece of the puzzle is in. I found it easier to use a magnet to get that one started there, and then just kind of start it with my fingers, and then finished it off with a ratchet. But that was the hardest piece. So we're going to go ahead and next we'll get this other piece that lays down on here. There's like 6 bolts, I think, holding it. So this sets this way. Note that tab that goes back here, and you have to kind of get that back on there so it'll get out of your way. And then the rest of these line up. You can see where all the bolts go here. Got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think the other ones are for the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, the other one's for the other part. This 3 that's secure there. Right, so this bracket slips under that, so you have to kind of leave that loose. The other bolts go there, and we've got 3 more here, looks like. I may in fact be missing one, which if I'm just missing one, I call that a win. But it could be that it's attached to something else. I don't know, but I've got 3 more of these anyways. And if I can't find this one, then I think it'll be fine. It's really kind of overkill, as many bolts as is in this thing. Okay, so there we have that. Went ahead and connected this one. We've got all these labeled as to where they go. And we've also got this that runs around here on these tabs. I'm trying to, we'll get it sorted out in a minute here. Okay, I had to get this routed down here. So all these are labeled, and so this is a kind of a complex little contraption. So this has got a screw holding it there, and this snaps down onto this, which kind of holds it there. But other than that, it's really, seems to be an overly engineered device just to hold this computer and stuff up here. But anyways, I'm trying to make sure that I've got everything in the right order, because I don't want to have to take something back off here. Okay, other than the battery brace, we've got everything connected here. We've got our connectors back on. Got our screws and bolts where they go. We've got that little piece that lays down in here. We'll probably put that in there. I'm not sure. I may hold off on putting the brace on until I have a chance to try a lot of this out. But I think we're going to go ahead and get our intake and stuff back on here next, and get that down and start putting some, we got to get some power steering fluid, and we need to start getting some fluid into the transmission. I want to start with about 5 quarts. I said 5 quarts is about what you need to get the, if you're just draining it and filling it. I don't know how much is in there, but I'm going to start there. Okay, so we're just starting with this piece, and then we'll slip this back on here. Don't forget about your connector to your air box. It's got a rubber grommet down here, so I got the lithium on it there. There's also 10mm right here that I purposely left so I wouldn't lose it. It's a really long bolt. So we're going to slip it in to this intake and then pop it down there. Okay, and there's also the rubber grommet up here it pops into. So we got that tightened down. Only thing I got to do is tighten these bands down with an 8mm and an extension, and then we'll get our piece that goes up here. Okay, so we got this piece slipped back on and got the bolts up on here, and I'm just getting ready to hook the battery up, and we're going to go ahead. Actually, yeah, I can still get to that just fine. I'm going to go ahead and get, once we hook the battery up, I'm going to get the power steering fluid, and we're going to start putting, we're going to get 5 quarts of CVT fluid in here. Alright, we just got our power steering full for now. I'll probably have to add more to it, so I've got some more on standby here. And we're fixing to go ahead and start filling our CVT right through here. Okay, so I've got 5 quarts. This is what I'm using. If you want to use the Nissan fluid, you're more than welcome to. Be my guest, it's about $20-something a quart. And can't remember exactly what this was, but it's pretty cheap. 6 quarts for, I want to say like $40. Ordered it on Amazon. And I wound up getting 12 quarts altogether because I don't know how much I'm going to need and whatnot. So I'm just going to go ahead and start adding. I'm going to go ahead and put 5 quarts. I'm sure it's going to need at least 5 quarts to start. And then we're going to fire it up and, you know, check it from there, get it up to temperature. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but if you read on the back of this fluid, it says that it's NS3 comparable. So it's basically the same thing, it's just not the Nissan. Now, if I had a new transmission, I would probably use the Nissan, just because I don't know if there's any difference, any real difference. But being that this one's used, this is good enough. You know, if I had a new vehicle though, probably, you know, I'd want to go with the Nissan, seeing how many problems they have with these. But I think a lot of it mainly comes from just not changing this fluid. You know, if it's dirty, it needs to be changed. That's just going to increase the life of the transmission. Okay, so I've got 5 quarts in, I've got power steering fluid in. I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. We're going to check it for leaks and make sure we don't have any problems, see how it's going to do, and then we'll probably go ahead and pop these wheels back on. Okay, we got it cranked up running here. I wasn't even registering on the dipstick, so I added another quart. I can always get some out if need be. I did put a little bit more power steering fluid in. It's still a little bit low, so I wound up putting about a half a quart in there. So I'm gonna start running it through some gears and just keep a check. I'm gonna get this up to temperature and just keep a check on it until I get it up in between these hash marks. Okay, so I now have 7 quarts in. Like I said, when they drain these and ship them, they probably purge a lot out, so I didn't know how much is going to be in here. So I'm going to run it through some more gears and just keep checking it here. But I think I'm going to go ahead. I don't see any leaks. Everything's looking good. I've got the wheels on. I'm going to go ahead and get it off the blocks and drop it down here, and we may try to move it around a little bit. Okay, so here we are driving this down the road. I got it a little bit full. I was a little bit above. You got 2 little hatch marks. I was a little bit above after driving this. I should have stopped at about 6.5 quarts, but for whatever reason, I got a little bit too much. I'm gonna just pop one of those trans cooler lines off when I get a chance and drain it out into a little quart jug. Get about a half a quart out or so. Just wanted to show you, this thing is really nice. It's got a nice backup camera on it and everything, and it's a really sharp vehicle is why I wanted to fix it. And it's got leather It's all leather. It's a really nice car. It's definitely worth fixing, even though the transmission was pricey. This is in really good shape. I know I've got a check engine light, a few things, but I just got it running, hadn't had a chance to look at it. But yeah, it's really a sharp vehicle. And so far this transmission is shifting really nice. I'm really impressed with it. And I'm really impressed with the way that these drive, because I mean, it really drives smooth. It's probably one of the best riding vehicles that I've had, and so I can kind of see why people like these and want to own these. So it's a really nice vehicle. But I mean, it's shifting really good. I mean, I don't think I know I've driven other CVTs, but it's a really smooth shifting transmission, like no problems at all. Usually, like anytime I put a regular transmission in, I get a few bucks and jerks till it kind of relearns and stuff, but this one is really smooth. I can tell I've got a little bit of an alignment issue. You know, I could have very well disturbed that with everything that I took off of here, so that's going to have to be looked at. Of course, the tires aren't the best, so who's to say that it's not a tire issue. But I mean, it's driving really good. Just other than letting out about a half a quart of fluid, so I can get the fluid level just perfect, I don't really see any problems. And really, you know, I could drain out more than that, I'm sure, you know, to try to get the fluid a little bit cleaner. I may just go ahead and take out a few quarts and get it back. But anyways, just want to show you this going down the road. It's shifting really nice. And I guess I could give you the tour of this thing. Other than just being a little bit filthy in the floor mats, it was this thing was well taken care of. So it's got nice leather seats, the wood grain, sunroof. Now this one is not the all-wheel drive. Here's the back. It's really nice back here. So it's got the big wheels on it. But yeah, it's just a push start, but really well taken care of. But this one here, most of these are all-wheel drive. This one is actually just a front-wheel drive vehicle, but so far no problems. I got a little bit of burn off. I can smell from it's coming off the engine there. Other than that, it's no issues so far. Alright, so that's going to do it on replacing the transmission in this 2013 Murano. Now, I've only spent about 3 days this week, and the rain kind of messed me up a little bit today, but I was actually able to go ahead and finish it up. So the transmission was a little pricey, you know, and these things run like around $1,800, $2,000 all day long if you can find them. And said I was lucky to find this one for about $1,100. So, and it's working just fine. So anyways, that's going to do it. You know, please comment if you have anything you want to add. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, I invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.